and sometimes not in the microphone. So I've got a homework assignment tonight, and we'll see if I can follow it. I wanted to welcome everybody for coming. A couple minutes ago, I was worried we wouldn't have any attendance, so I really appreciate y'all braving this January evening and coming out and seeing what we were up to. I think we're very excited to kind of share where we are and do a little check-in with the community and the planning board. And again, thank you very much for coming out. I've got notes over here and a computer over here, so bear with me as I balance. A couple people I want to acknowledge in the audience tonight. First of all, Councilman Rob Nielsen back there. Thanks for joining us. I think the other two council members, Botanic and Sherlock, or Mark Botanic and Paula Sherlock, are joining us via YouTube tonight. Our planning board chair, Andy Ward. Thanks for coming, Andy. Very much appreciate your presence. And vice chair, Jan Collins. And I think that other than Michael Zahner, who's also on the planning board, I think that's our elected and appointed representatives in the crowd. But thank you all for coming from the SSCA and CPOA. The Entry Corridor Committee is over here to my left. I'm Mayor Pro Tem Neal. Michael Zahner, town resident. Jim Gould, town resident. Matt Price, town resident. And Mayor Pro Tem Maury, as well as Deputy Town Manager Wes Haskett and our Town Manager Cliff Ogburn. Not with us is other long-term resident, Linda Lobby, who joined us for the first several meetings and then had to step aside for other commitments that she had. I want to express appreciation for their effort. This is very much a DIY volunteer group, and we've been through a lot the last year, and it's been fun. We've had some great discussions and couldn't have done any bit of it without their assistance. Up to the slides. This is where I got to manage my eyeballs. Tonight we'll be presenting phase one of the Entry Corridor Enhancement Plan. This is a long-range vision for the gateway to Southern Shores that emphasizes stewardship, alignment with adopted policy. I'm going to move this over here, and thoughtful evolution over time. It's important to note that this is phase one, and it's primarily about listening and understanding, capturing current conditions, community sentiment, and shared priorities. Phase two, which will follow, will focus on specific recommendations and informed directly by this work. This effort is not about changing Southern Shores. It's about being intentional with the first impression our community presents. First slide. So the committee was established by council on October 1st, 2024. The intent was a thoughtful, deliberate look at the Entry Corridor. Composition was intended to include elected leadership, staff, and members of the community with relevant planning experience. And I've already introduced those members. This wasn't intended to be a top-down exercise. We wanted balanced perspectives from across the generations that contribute to this town. So what are we talking about? What is the corridor? This was kind of the first thing that the committee set out to define. We've developed this graphic with a red line that kind of captures most of what you'll notice is generally the commercial district in town. There's also a very important element of this corridor that we are not going to touch upon tonight, but we want to revisit at a later date, which is our neighboring town of Kitty Hawk and then the unincorporated portions of Dare County. This is your first experience of Dare County when you're coming in across that bridge. And historically, it's been the first introduction to who we are as a community here in Dare County, and it deserves that level of attention. We wanted to keep it targeted to this area specifically to focus on the priorities that are established within this district and not have more of a town-wide drift, and keep our efforts very focused in the commercial zone specifically. The purpose of the plan that we've developed is provide long-term guidance, not specifically regulation, grounded in comprehensive land use plan principles that we've already established and adopted within the town. Our focus is on stewardship and consistency over time. This is my slowing down. One of the first things that we tackled beyond the defining the geographic boundaries was the mission statement that we adopted in our second meeting. I'll let you all take a second to read it as I go over generally what it's about. We needed a place to start, and we needed something to reference as we went back. And this, I think, encapsulates some of the priorities that we were trying to capture. In addition to the mission statement, we adopted these 7 goals, and I'll be going through those 7 goals one by one and as they relate to our land use plan. There's going to be a quiz after. It was important to us that those goals were linked to a policy foundation, and that's what I'm going to discuss in the next several slides and be the end of the section that I present. As we go through each individual goal, you'll see that they are linked to our land use plan, and they tie into priorities that have already been established through town governance. Goal number 1, establish unified architectural standards and district aesthetics. The land use plan alignment is with LUC 3.1, LUC 7, LUC 8.1. Those are expanded a little bit further in the report itself, and we're happy to touch on those in all of them as we go through later in the question and answer period. One of the things I want to stress is this is both building elements, but it's also signage, it's branding, it's welcoming, it's cohesiveness of this corridor district instead of some of the disparate nature that we've experienced through development so far. Goal 2, promote biodiverse landscaping and green spaces. We love our trees. That's a fact. I think everybody cohesively agrees to that in Southern Shores. This goes beyond just vegetation. We're also looking at pocket parks, places of respite, places to unify the natural topography of the land within our commercial district. And again, it aligns with Land Use Plan 8.1, our landscaping standards, and Land Use Plan LUC 12, corridor overlay and site design. Goal 3, support diverse housing incentives. This is to allow other development than just large multifamily projects within our commercial district. It's to give the flexibility to the property owner and provoke more of a town square type identity to the commercial sector. Land Use Plan 3.1, scale and intensity, LUC 8, family friendly environments. I got to catch my notes up. Foster community engagement and collaboration. This is more of your lifestyle stuff, your events, you're spending time together in these spaces. And this is something we wanted to build a greater collaboration with our local commercial property owners and the businesses that occupy those spaces. It aligns with LUC 8, family-friendly environments. Goal number 5, advance economic development aligned with community values. This section aligns specifically with encourage commercial development along US 158 and southern end of Highway 12, as well as LUC 8 family-friendly environments. The goal here is to promote local small businesses as well as our national partners and provide a viable business opportunity for them within the town commercial district. Again, this one and the following goal will really lead into sort of the town square concept that we're trying to develop. Enhance accessibility and connectivity. That is not committee member Jim Gould on the bike. That is a neighborhood kid who's able to get a picture of. This is to improve pedestrian bicycle safety, reduce reliance on automobiles, and create a more walkable connected corridor. This is really critical, especially as some of our current discussions go on mobility through town and the ability to navigate through the midst of traffic and all types of navigation, not automobile specific. And it aligns with MB2 and MB 2.3. Goal 7 is one that I think is one that I spend a lot of my personal time thinking about. I do not want what we've developed to just become a plan on the shelf that doesn't get developed. So what we're going to try to do in phase 2, and that really will be a phase 2 Elevate, is have a set of policy recommendations, both town code and zoning text amendments, as well as just potential just policy documents that we develop, and come up with sort of a metric of how do we gauge our progress as we achieve these goals. And I think that is that's a living thing. It's going to continue to happen. It's not just once something's published and put out and we forget. And that's going to take a sort of a community effort across all of our stakeholders. And so the goals or the takeaways that I want you to hear from this part of it is that some of the mission statement, the goals of the corridor committee was founded and had a strong foundation within the land use plan itself, something that was already taken into consideration and adopted by the town. And we've looked at how to expand it and to give it a more purposeful directive for the town. I'm leading into Jim's slides, and he's going to give you a much more interesting and character-driven explanation of our community and context. So thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Good evening, everyone. If we haven't met, my name is Jim Gould. I've been a resident in Southern Shores for about 12 years and live here with my wonderful wife and 2 young boys, a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. So I just think that offers a wonderful perspective that may be a little bit different than the typical demographic or the most common demographic found within our boundaries. So long before I set foot into Southern Shores, long before I was born, this area was developed with a vision from Mr. Stick. And that vision really began in the 1940s when he realized that there needs to be a strong balance between coastal living and environmental preservation. And that's still something that we value today. So when he came to this conclusion, he probably never envisioned that there'd be over 3,000 residents living here and that the population would only grow even larger throughout the summer months as we welcomed many, many visitors here into our community to enjoy everything that we have to offer. So that being said, I think we're all very familiar with what Southern Shores has to offer. And for me, it really has to offer some of these things. Southern Shores ultimately creates a feeling that I really enjoy. It's a feeling that is focused on or comes from low density development, development that's intermingled with a deep respect for nature, preserving some of those natural environments. The vision that Frank Stick there in the middle had when he was maybe playing with his dog outside of his flat top there. The architecture drives a certain simple feeling. The landscaping drives a feeling. The interconnectivity of the area through informal and formal pathways helps create this nice network that makes a lot of areas easily approachable. The sunsets, the parks offer ample opportunity, whether on CPOA property or Southern Shore Civic Association property or even maybe town property in the future. Ample opportunity for recreation and enjoyment. And then, of course, we can always begin our day on the ocean front and end our day on the sound side and witness the sunrise and the sunset and experience this place in all of its grandeur. Now, when we go through this slide deck and see these images, what I haven't put in here is a lot of these images that are on the boards in front of you or to the left here. And that is the diverse offerings that the commercial area represents. And the feeling that I get is oftentimes driven by something that's deeper into Southern Shores rather than something that is felt as soon as we get across the Wright Brothers Memorial Bridge. However, we know that for a lot of folks coming onto the Outer Banks, crossing over that Wright Brothers Memorial Bridge, the first thing that they experience is this corridor. That's what welcomes us and welcomes visitors to the area. So let's talk about this corridor because it's relatively small when it comes down to it. It's about 2.9% of our land mass. And that area that we focused on that Matt showed the nice aerial imagery of earlier is 93% commercial. So for the majority of that, it's general commercial. And then we have a small area that is going to be low density housing, low density residential. And then an even smaller district that's where we're sitting that's set aside for local government. And it's a local government institutional zone where we have us and our police department, things like that. So you're relatively familiar with this area. Just want to bring it more into context. Now, while this area encompassing 2.9% of Southern Shore's total land mass is small, it's vastly important. I think we will see through Mike Zahner's presentation later of how folks use this area. It's used heavily. So we're in and out of this corridor to either travel through it, hopefully not just doing that, but actually engaging with the businesses that are here and perhaps engaging with each other as we visit those businesses. So my point is here is to not, I can't overemphasize how important the corridor is in being one of the first things that we see or experience as we get into the town of Southern Shores, and then B, how it could drive our local economic success, our local success as a community, in a sense that it could become this all-encompassing place that could serve as the heart of Southern Shores. And I think that's what I'd like to see personally. And I think that we'll get a better understanding of what other folks in Southern Shores would like to see when we start to go through the results with Mr. Zahner. Now, it's important to note here that we're not trying to reinvent the wheel necessarily. This area is already governed by land use policies that reflect or that govern things such as landscaping, signage, parking, everything like that within the corridor through the zoning maps and the zoning text that are here. One of the things that hasn't been pointed out yet is, some of you all may not know this, but the jurisdictional boundaries of Southern Shores essentially end north of the multi-use path. So the entire corridor along US 158 is in the realm of responsibility for the town of Kitty Hawk or the Department of Transportation, North Carolina Department of Transportation. And we are in an agreement with them that we have full use, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Haskett, of the multi-use path, but our jurisdiction actually stops just north of the multi-use path along US 158. So I feel like it's important to note that, because in the future here, we'll certainly have to work closely with partners, including Kitty Hawk, the North Carolina Department of Transportation, and Dare County. So looking ahead, the challenge and the opportunity is maintaining the balance that defines Southern Shores. And that means for us in this community context, protecting our coastal environment and small town character, while making sure that our commercial corridor remains functional, attractive, and aligned with our community values. As a parent raising kids here, that balance really matters to me. And this plan is about building sort of on what already works in this area, and then moving forward, making thoughtful improvements and ensuring that Southern Shores continues to feel like Southern Shores for all of us and future generations to come. So that being said, I'll maybe step aside from sort of more how I feel, and we'll let Mr. Zahner come up to the podium and begin to discuss some of the things we learned through our community outreach.
Thank you, Jim. Michael Zahner, I guess since Jim gave his bio, I have to give mine. I have a 10-year-old and an 8-year-old. I live immediately adjacent to the corridor. Well, not immediately, another house beyond that, and lived here since 2020, and a member of the planning board. So public engagement, this was a critical component of the work that we were doing. We certainly, as a committee, didn't want our voices to be the ones that dictated the path forward. We wanted to understand what the public, what their perspectives were. As we indicated in the report, this was intended to gain a deeper insight into existing conditions, perceptions, and aspirations for the corridor. And we wanted to understand how public sentiments relate to and inform the goals and eventual actions that we come up with. So we focused on 3 principal tasks: stakeholder interviews and a community survey, and then a public open house. So in terms of the stakeholder interviews, very early on in the process, we had one-on-one or one-on-two interviews with owners of Southern Shores Crossing, representatives of Saga, and then representatives of the marketplace as well. And some of these takeaways we learned from them. We also followed up towards the end after the survey when we determined that we needed to learn a little bit more from commercial owners, but also business owners. If you're straining to look at the screen, I encourage you definitely look at the report online. These are directly taken from the report. But essentially, we heard supportive perspectives, property owners open to mixed use. We heard interest in sidewalk dining and parking lot opportunities, usable parking spaces beyond parking. We also heard interest in potentially reducing some parking requirements. They identified constraints for us, a lot of constraints around wastewater and septic limitations, lot sizes and zoning, and concerns about signage restrictions, also visibility associated with landscaping. We heard interest in terms of visibility and branding, business visibility. We share a zip code with Kitty Hawk as well as Duck, and concerns by some business owners about people finding their businesses. And then corridor identity and wayfinding, interest in improvements to corridor branding, including banners, flags, cohesive signage, ways to unify the perspective for the corridor and the branding for the corridor. Interest in merchant association and community engagement, better collaboration between merchants, public safety partnerships with the police department, and then additional feedback, opinions about golf cart usage, and then also cost considerations. I don't think the property owners that we talked to were opposed to aesthetic enhancements, but they also did wonder if there were cost-sharing programs that could be involved to help support those. So all of those opinions informed our conclusions that you'll hear at the end, but also what we heard at the public open house. So this was an informal session we held in this room on May 27th, and the boards around the room were on display there. We had 4 stations. 3 of them had these boards: the buildings and architecture, signage, landscaping, green space, recreation, pedestrian and bike infrastructure, and then lastly, uses, mixed use, development, and redevelopment. And with these, there were a series of prompts and questions to get people thinking. It was informal. We asked people to post sticky notes, which we collected, and the notes are included in the report. And we also asked people to respond in writing on the forms we provided, and we did receive some of those. But again, it was informal, and I think the biggest value were a lot of the conversations that were held in the room. Some of the common themes we heard was general support for the idea of mixed-use development. I think once people learned what the expectation was, what the thought was, that we weren't talking about potentially increasing density or significant building height or significant development, but incorporating residential and commercial in a consistent scale, I think people were more supportive of that. A softening of previously expressed concerns once the goals of the study were better understood, and a strong enthusiasm for improvements related to aesthetics and landscaping. So lastly, and it kind of was going on, obviously, when we held the open house, the survey was still open. So a lot of people learned about what we were doing through the survey and then also attended the open house. So I'm going to go through generally the responses to the 18 questions, but there were a total of 542 responses, which was a good total for the survey. 73% of the responses were related to residents of the town. So here, I think it shows 68% were residents. That 73 is comprised of people that were responding as households, smaller number, and people that were under 18, which I think there were only 2, and they were both my kids. So, and I did not help them. I had to help. It was interesting because I had to help explain what some of the terminology meant, which was helpful to me because this is what I actually do for my job. So I was thinking, oh, okay, well, that needs to be explained better. People were connected who took the survey, connected for a long time to the town, 66% over 11 years. And then age, let's see, 3/4 were 55 and older, which is more or less in line with our demographics if you look at census data. How often do you visit or travel along the corridor? Daily, the majority of the respondents. Primary reason, shopping, recreation, leisure were the top responses. And then in one word or phrase, how would you currently describe the entry corridor? And this was an open form response, and this is a word cloud that highlights, makes larger the words that were used most often. Commercial, busy, adequate, functional, fine, nondescript, congested. I don't know if these are, great words from a branding standpoint, but, I don't know that anyone or a significant number of people felt overly excited or proud about the corridor. How satisfied are you with the current appearance of the entry corridor? 56% was a neutral rating of 3. Again, that kind of highlights some of the responses to the previous question. Only 29 respondents indicated that they were very dissatisfied, while 48 reported they were very satisfied. What aspects of the corridor currently work well? Proximity to services and amenities, access to businesses, and parking availability were the top 3 responses. What aspects of the corridor most need improvement? Visual appeal and beautification, traffic flow and safety, and availability of green spaces or parks were the top 3 responses. In terms of how important are the following priorities for the corridor, and if you look at this graph on the right, on the top, those would be positive responses. So the greater the bar there, those would be very important, and on the bottom, those would be not important. So if the bar is taller on the larger on the top, it's more important. Preserving the town's heritage and character, improving pedestrian and bicycle access, and creating a unified and visually appealing design. Those were the top priorities. Not important, supporting diverse housing options. That carried the day. If you can see the third column from the left, that would be that response. In terms of what new features or amenities would you like to see along the corridor, the top 3 responses or priorities: sidewalks and bike lanes, public parks, gathering spaces, outdoor dining, and similar amenities, and more restaurants, shops, and entertainment options. And then this is impossible for you to read in this. To what extent would you support new development along the entry corridor if it included the following features? Strongly support limitations on building height and density, adherence to architectural standards, integration of green spaces, landscaping, or pocket parks. And then people would strongly oppose mixed-use design, housing that is attainable for individuals and families with a range of incomes. So another open-ended, open forum response: are there specific features or design standards that would make you more likely to support new development or redevelopment along the corridor? And in the report, we kind of go into what we summarized as these responses, but respondents emphasized maintaining Southern Shore's coastal character, preserving open space, and promoting landscaping and visual cohesion. Many called for walkability improvements, safer crossings and bike paths, along with low-density development and building heights. There was widespread support for green spaces and thoughtful architecture, and mixed views on housing and mixed-use development. Respondents also expressed concern about traffic, aesthetic standards, and the scale and type of commercial uses. And then the second question on the right: conversely, are there any features or types of development that would make you less likely to support a project? I think obviously housing and development comes to be highlighted here. Respondents expressed strong opposition to high density and multifamily housing, including apartments, condominiums, and affordable or low-income housing. Many were concerned about increased traffic, loss of green space, and overdevelopment that detracts from the coastal, small-town character of Southern Shores. Specific examples of undesirable development included mixed-use buildings, high-rise structures, fast food chains, large commercial big box stores, and visually jarring or poorly maintained businesses, especially these bad candy stores, and tourist-oriented shops. There was a consistent call for maintaining the existing aesthetic avoiding crowding, and not replicating the look or experience of neighboring towns perceived as overbuilt. So on this slide, where do you primarily shop for the following goods and services? We wanted to understand what kind of gaps there may be in the marketplace. Groceries, nearly everyone that responded shops for those in town, whereas that was by far the leading candidate for the town. And then you can see, and this is obvious to everyone who lives here, things that you cannot purchase and shop for in town, whether you go to neighboring towns or perhaps online. And then how often do you shop or dine in Southern Shores? Close to 50% weekly was based on the responses. And then what would motivate you to shop or dine more frequently in Southern Shores? And bear with me 1 second. Um, 399 respondents, that was the top, 73% identified a greater variety of shops or restaurants as the top motivator, followed by 240 at 44%, who indicated they would be more motivated by the opportunity to support local businesses and keep tax dollars within the community. And then one slide we did not have up here, it's another word cloud, but it is in the report. Respondents were asked to identify the types of goods and services they would be most likely to purchase locally if they were available. And restaurants is the boldest and largest word there, followed by clothing, dining, food. That wraps up my part of it, but I think I would again highlight the fact that it was paramount to us that we understood what the public wanted here. And I would say I've worked with a ton of groups like this, and obviously I'm a member of it, but there were no sacred cows for this group. I think for each one of us, there's things we're interested in, passionate about, but I think we all wanted to come to this to see what we could do to improve the corridor and make it part of, not some other area, make it distinct to the town of Southern Shores and understand what that means and understand the opportunities, the constraints, the challenges with that, and get public buy-in to that. And that's part of it tonight, to understand whether or not our conclusions are correct, and setting the stage for the next part. And so, Mayor, we'll talk about what our takeaways and conclusions are. So there we go. Thank you.
I'm batting cleanup. They call me the sweeper. So just a couple things. Number one, all these folks are so talented, and it was a privilege for me to represent the demographic that dominates in the town, and so I did that for the team, and learned a lot through this process. I could not enlarge this picture, but anyway, I took a picture in Marshall's. I'm not trying to sell Marshall's, sorry. But they had below their store name, they had Southern Shores, North Carolina. I'd never seen a store have our town name associated with their store name. I just thought it was significant. So I had to ask to take the picture because I didn't want them to get, nervous about what I was doing. Anyway, just wanted to share that with you. So these are, very quickly, the committee's collective takeaways. And it starts out with the commercial district aesthetics. What does our commercial zone look like? Actually, this whole effort started because we took on the idea of unified design standards, mainly because Mayor Pro Tem wanted us to do that. So that's what happens sometimes. Somebody wants to push something. So the other thing that was going on is the Sugar Planet, or whatever that was. And there were members of our council who were extremely concerned about having something like that show up in our commercial district. So, but we couldn't really decide. You know, you can decide pretty easily what you don't want, but when you come to trying to decide what you do want, then it gets more challenging. So then we said, well, maybe that's what this effort will start to move towards. So support unified design standards that reinforce Southern Shores' identity. And we want to develop clear but flexible standards. That was the idea. Landscaping and green spaces. As Michael shared, almost everyone is in favor of the greening of the corridor to soften the commercial character of what you see when you come into town. Contrast that with, if you're a business owner and you want customers, you want them to be able to see your sign, find your store, because that's what it's all about, as we learned from one of the members of our committee who is a commercial property owner. It's bodies coming into the store. That's what you want. That's what drives the economy. So business and property owners want landscaping that enhances visibility without obstructing signage. Kind of obvious, but those two things are a little contrasting. So that's something we need to take away. The third is housing diversity. As Michael said in the survey, the numbers clearly show that the community has concerns about housing density. What we'd like to think that we can allay some of those concerns by providing scale-appropriate mixed uses to meet economic balance, and we need to provide visual examples. What would this look like? Instead of people going, down the rabbit hole of, something that they don't think they would like. Takeaway 4, community engagement. We had so many responses to this survey. I mean, we kind of blew it. We love a survey in Southern Shores. I mean, we did the land use plan survey, and it was a huge number of participants. So generally speaking, people like to be asked their opinions, and sure enough, they're willing to share. So the town of Southern Shores should sponsor and support community gathering opportunities, which is what our takeaway is on engagement. By the way, there's a blue light out in the parking lot. There's an officer out there. They just pulled in. I don't know if they want to come into our gathering but I thought it was something I should let someone know. Okay, quickly, next slide. Align economic development with community values. What does that mean? So both the community and business owner and operators desire economic development that includes a heart of the corridor where people can shop, dine, and gather. We heard that numerous times. A place to gather, a place to meet people. That's kind of what people want. Enhanced accessibility and connectivity. I mean, this one is universal. Strong community support for improved pedestrian bicycle safety. We need to think about this. Accessibility, mobility, safety, and connectivity are actually infrastructure. It's really infrastructure. That's how we need to think about it. And we need to raise its important level up to the level of maintaining infrastructure. So, what now? Real quick. I went to the fall festival at the school and saw a lot of people there. And there was a tent there that was being done by the folks from Food Line. So I walked up to the Food Line tent. And sure enough, it was the manager of the Food Line and his staff. They were handing out bottles of water. And so I introduced myself. I said, I'm Elizabeth Morey. I'm actually the mayor of Southern Shores. And he was like, really? I said, yeah. So we shook hands and he had come from the Nag's Head Food Lion store. And I said, well, is there anything that the town could do or is not doing that would be favorable to your business? And he said, I love this Food Lion. The sign faces the highway. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, he's contrasting the Nag's Head store where it doesn't face the highway. Okay, I get it. Anyway, bottom line is this experience has opened my eyes to the fact that we have a thriving, that's Jim turning on the microphone. We have a thriving community that consists of a huge residential footprint, but we also have a commercial footprint in our community. And it deserves to be as thriving as the residential, in my opinion. So eye opener for me as an elected person. I always think about we're taking care of people who are in single family homes. That's who we are. Well, we're also taking care of our commercial corridor. So I'm going to hand it over to Matt. What now? You like that? What now?
We're going to leave the what now up for a little bit, I think. I'd like to open it to questions and comments, first to the general public that's here, and then to the planning board and council members that said. Jim's wandering with his wand, and will approach you at a safe distance and maybe hand it off, maybe dangle it. I'm not sure. We're kind of free flow at this point. But Jim's going to identify you, and then we'd love to hear the questions and comments.
You're welcome to keep your hand raised or just raise it right now.
Yeah.
Go ahead. You led the charge.
Be sure and tell us your name and where you live, please. Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you,
My
ma'am.
name is Ann Scherdsma. I live on North Dogwood Trail. I've been a resident full-time about 30 years, part-time longer than that. And I was here, I know Southern Shores from the 1960s. So to a great extent, I feel like what you're trying to do is go backward to what we did have back when, maybe in the 90s, when the Marketplace had a movie theater. It had a wonderful restaurant, Carolina Blue. It had Wild Birds Unlimited. It had a coffee shop where people gathered and met with each other. It had, it didn't have much about Food Line, but we had Daniel's. It was much more in line with the character of today's town than what it became. And I argued strongly against what it became. But the town council sided with the businesses, in particular with the owner of the Marketplace, who determined the aesthetics of that shopping center. In fact, destroyed a pocket park that was there, which we argued over. It was a big dispute as to whether or not that should be permitted, and we argued against more parking. So Matt, Jim, what troubles me a little bit is the boat has sailed. And when there was time to do something, nobody was interested in standing up to the businesses. And how are you going to do that now? How are you going to change the Marketplace? How are you going to work with the owner of the Marketplace who, like Elizabeth just said, we don't want the park there, it's obstructing our signs. And then where are these mixed use units going to go? Atop the Marketplace? Along the 158 corridor in an area that has not been developed yet? Over where Saga's property is? I'm skeptical about all of this. Not that I don't want to plan and do something to preserve the character of Southern Shores, but a lot has happened. And I remember many land use plans that said exactly what you're saying now. And the town council did not heed them. So it's not negativity, but it's reality. And, I'd like to know, how are you going to deal with the owner of the Marketplace, who's in Baltimore, I believe? How are you going to finesse that with,
I think it's having the conversations that we have had and having more conversations and figuring out where there are synergies things that we agree on, things that we don't agree on. How do we resolve those things? I tend to agree with you. The amount of money that they've invested in there, they're not going to go back to a different architectural style. They're not going to go rip up a field of parking that's immediately in front of Marshall's. Yeah, those things have sailed, but we can capitalize on other opportunities. And I think it doesn't help to be adversarial with them, but it doesn't help also to recognize that they're a private landowner. They have property rights as well. But I think in the conversations that we had with them, the hour-long conversation, they realized that we were maybe receptive to some things that they would have assumed that we were not receptive to. And I think we learned about some of the limitations that they had as well. And that was just one 1-hour conversation. And I don't know that we presume that anything is going to happen to the marketplace, but things could. And I can tell you the biggest thing we need to plan for is that things will change, and that we have to anticipate what those changes are within the constraints of our regulations, our plans, market conditions, all of that.
But if you get out in front with your design standards, they're not going to apply to the marketplace because it's built.
I mean, I would suppose that you could say that most of the commercial district is built, so we should just let it roll as it is. But
No,
I think
but-
that the endeavor of this committee is to set a standard and a vision for what we would like to see and encourage it, rather than to constantly retroactively say we don't like that after a proposal comes through. This sets a standard and paves the road ahead in an effort to sort of bring all stakeholders in. Typically, you have sort of an adversarial relationship between property owners and municipal zoning authorities. This is an effort to try to bring, as Michael said, synergy to that, to recognize the needs of both the business owner, property owner, and the resident of the town. I remember when people were upset when Marketplace was built. So,
Oh, yeah,
I mean,
so did
it was
I.
like when Fast Eddie's was over there and the town's going to go to hell. So, these things are cyclical, but we've seen more redevelopment within the commercial district in the last 5 to 7 years than we've seen in some time. And I think when I was staring at a set of prints, which I won't name the property, I was looking at what can I do to make this look better? And our current zoning fell short of that. And this may not just be zoning aesthetics. This may not just be signage. It may not just be landscaping, but it is a comprehensive plan. Most of our land use plans have statutorily leaned towards sort of a CAMA blueprint, and it's a cut and paste assembly. This is a tailored product specifically for the 60 acres of our commercial district and our corridor overlay. And not only that, it is maybe pie in the sky, but I'm not going to stop. Kitty Hawk, Dare County. It is a Dare County level endeavor that I would like to take it towards. So maybe it's a wasted effort on my part, but I'm happy to continue wasting the time. So.
Thank you, Matt.
I don't think I need your mic.
And we'll just have you, we'll need,
posterity.
correct. And we'll have you state your, sorry, we'll also have you make sure you state your name.
Okay. My name is Liz Lanier. I've lived here since 2017, actually 2016, when we were building, because we were living over in Currituck at the time, crossing the bridge a lot. I'm currently a board member for the Southern Shores Boat Club. Like to see all this participation. I have one comment that I wasn't going to make, but based on the previous person, we've been coming here since the early 90s and passing through here. And I'm actually, as a homeowner, happy to see some of the development that's along the corridor because it makes services very easy to access. When we built our house, it was nice to be able to wander down just 2 miles to the Home Depot and to be able to purchase things last minute, if it may be. So it's been very convenient, but I do bemoan the loss of our bagel shop and some other things, and am concerned that what you want to do from a residential perspective may be adverse to the rents that the various different businesses are charging to keep those type of businesses there. We also lost our the Farm Bureau insurance company. I don't know where they are now. Which made it kind of less convenient to access this. But my concern the question I was going to ask has to do with the cooperation of Kitty Hawk, because you're talking about the Southern Shores side. What about the Kitty Hawk side? And I would think that that kind of cooperation would be necessary to kind of keep a cohesive look. And I don't know how on board they are. And Matt, you alluded to it being a Dare County thing, and this is also, you know, in cooperation with what we're doing to keep it cohesive and consistent. Because you show a lot of buildings on the other side and, you know, that are, you know, in contrast to perhaps what we're going to be doing in Southern Shore. So my question is, what is your plan in the future to get cooperation from Kitty Hawk and other areas in order to kind of make this plan a little bit more consistent across the board?
Persuasive salesmanship. No, really the endeavor is to make this polished. I mean, we're going to go into phase 2. We're going to have a set of recommendations, whether it be policy, zoning, text amendments, et cetera. And most of it is going to be more of your comprehensive land use plan type, like a corridor overlay type district. And then I'm willing to go on the road and start pitching. I've already briefly talked about it at different levels up and down, and both at county and with other stakeholders outside of just this town. And I think, again, it may be that it's too late. It may be, but at some point, my father's been building homes and hotels and things of that nature in the beach since the 70s. My grandfather's been in development. Nobody ever did this for Dare County. And just at what point do you say, okay, I give up? I mean, I think we're not there. And I'm going to keep trying, and I want to get their engagement. And I think there's actually some positive attitudes towards it, especially since some of the development. Every time you go through a boom and bust cycle, we've been at the top end of a boom cycle at this point. And I think attitudes are ready to look at longer term vision and cohesive development. So,
Okay, thank you.
And if I may, throughout phase 1, this has been heavy on our minds. How will we continue to coordinate with these entities? And the first step in the process was, well, first finding out what we all wanted to see for this corridor. So that really was a huge part of phase 1 conversations behind the scenes. So.
Rob, do you want to say yours for the council period?
About 4 hours ago, I was sitting next to the mayor of Kitty Hawk.
Wait a minute. You
What?
gotta have a microphone.
Yeah, Rob, we'll get you to hold on as we go through the citizen comments first. Next.
Anybody not elected want to say something? Yes, Nancy.
Hi, I'm Nancy Sheehan. I live on North Dogwood, and I had the privilege of actually moving into my parents' home. So we've owned property since the early 70s, built a home in the 90s. My parents went to Bonnie's Bagels here when it was a thing, very much a gathering place. So thank you all for your work, and also on the Civic Association board. So now to my question. And I'm learning a lot. This is really wonderful. What I'm wondering about, we've talked a lot about the commercial area. You mentioned a lot about the community gathering spaces. So I'm wondering if you have a vision for perhaps where those might be, because oftentimes those public spaces may not be big revenue generators like a library or a community center, but they're really important to bring people together. So I'm wondering where that fits in, and maybe it's not yet, but that was my question.
That's a great question. I'm going to take a short stab at it, and then I'm pretty sure Matt wants to say something too. You know, we're doing this generally in the context of the commercial district, right? The corridor. So we're going to start a conversation. We hope that this is starting a conversation about how to improve, you know, everything from what I said, the pedestrian access, the bicycle access. So I think initially we would envision a gathering place, a green space within that commercial that you saw the map of. Matt is on our team, and Matt is a commercial property owner. And from his perspective, which we learned lots from, commercial property owners are very happy to do something that gets people to come to their businesses. So I think we could figure out a way to find a partner. Matt, you want to take it from there?
I definitely hear you guys' concerns, and you guys are right on a lot of stuff. I went to the movie theater that you talked about. I went to Southern Bean when I was there, rode my bike all over those places. And I think, speaking a little off topic, but what you're seeing, I kind of study some of this stuff because this is what I do. You're seeing more of a return to these like neighborhood centric community center gathering spots that mix commerce with like almost a third space where it's kind of like a zone that is can be kind of democratized by anybody. And when people feel bought in and they buy into those communities, they spend more time there, which usually equals more dollars spent there. So then your commercial property developer or owner is going to really enjoy that. So I don't see these two things as mutually exclusive. Typically, when I'm looking at doing something like this in a town, it's usually an adversarial type of approach. But I don't think that's the way it's got to be. And just for the record, I'm not planning on doing anything in this town. I have lived in this town since I was a child, but and still live in this town. But I guess what I'm trying to say is I think that there can be some overlap where the town is trying to get some things that they want, and a commercial property might be trying to get some things that they want as well. And I think that there could be some area where that could kind of come together and everybody could get something they want, hopefully. And I oftentimes feel like when you lead with a carrot, maybe reducing the parking, you could get maybe a restaurant to do some outdoor dining and things like that. So I think there's a lot of opportunity here if the approach is right. And from every feeling I'm getting from these other commercial property owners, they seem to be receptive to these ideas, as long as they're not overly burdensome. I'm not saying, give away the milk with the cow either, but I think there is a happy medium that could be struck.
Any member of the audience have a question? Anne's already, had you asked a question?
Right here.
Oh, yes, go ahead.
Just, I'm Jeff Clank, her spouse. I'm curious just how you dealt with, we're dealing with a tension here. It's a corridor, which is a passageway from one point to another. And for half the year, we don't go anywhere near it because of the traffic that passes through that corridor. We stay away from it if possible. And I assume everybody here on Saturdays does pretty much the same or tries to. How did you just deal with that tension of dealing with this space as, the busiest traffic area probably in the Outer Banks with several 100,000 people going by in their cars every Saturday or every few Saturdays, with its role as that corridor, and then the role that we're trying to contemplate here, which is where are we going to stop and gather and have fun? Now, those don't necessarily have to happen at the same time, but I'm just wondering how you dealt with that inherent tension.
We never hear about traffic here.
Oh, okay.
Jeff.
All right.
I don't even know what you're talking about. Go ahead, Matt.
So the idea, I was going to say, to put it broadly, the idea is to make places attractive to the point where people would enjoy pulling off of the corridor and stopping to engage with our community on the left-hand side of the road as they come in, or on the right-hand side of the road as they leave. Not that being said, we'd love for them to engage with the neighboring municipality too. When it comes to the interplay of very busy roadway where the speed limit is one that's frightening to pedestrians or bicyclists, however you want to walk or roll along, that's something that's been heavy on our minds and talked about, and will be explored further with our recommendations. How do you now create an area that promotes connectivity on a pedestrian scale while maintaining safe access for cars traveling at high speeds, or safe access for pedestrians with cars that are nearby traveling at high speeds. It's something to be explored, something that we've talked about. And I think the idea is ultimately to get people to slow down and pull into our area, And Mr. Zane?
Yeah, I was going to.
Yeah, I would just add too, we talked about it in the context of mobility, improving people's ability to get to those properties from neighborhoods. But even for myself, I would not walk or bike to go to Front Porch. I wouldn't cross 158. But is that something where we talk about talking with Kitty Hawk and DOT, is that something that's a condition that could be improved? So I think looking at it in that way, from a mobility, a safety standpoint, it still strikes me as odd that half the property owners to the west, all the property owners to the west of the marketplace could not get there with a golf cart. And if we're trying to cut down on trips, if we're trying to cut down on vehicular traffic, if we're trying to encourage people to bike, walk, maybe use a low-speed vehicle, are there ways that we can make those connections in a safer way, a disconnected way from the highway? You recognize the volume's not going to change, but while you said we all try not to travel on 168, we all travel to spots in town along 168. And so we have to figure out an easier way to accommodate for that.
I would just tell Michael he's got to go to Shore Coffee, which is in Southern Shores. But yeah, that's true. You really tapped on something where we may have the most leverage to make immediate change too, and it might be a large problem, but it's one where the impact might be felt sooner. Obviously, we're not going to rebuild the marketplace or make everything a flat top like I would want, but we might be able to increase mobility and connection to these points. And this is an element where every stakeholder, SSCA, CPOA, the town of Southern Shores, the property owners, everybody can come together to potentially provide a solution for those issues and have more of a communal space that we travel to in a variety of manners. So, I mean, it's a large problem and a serious one, but actually one that we might be able to touch faster. So. Any other citizen comments on the hand? You've been holding your hand up.
I just wanted to ask Jim a question.
Well, good.
Okay. Except for the housing diversity goal, Jim, has DUC achieved all of these? Unified design standards, landscaping, green space, community gathering opportunities, et cetera? Because you're involved with planning. And
I'll
DUC.
speak for Jim. He's
Yeah,
probably
he'll be
not-
in trouble if
You shouldn't put him on the spot for that.
Well, I didn't think it was putting him on the spot.
Well, he's here in a capacity of his resident in the town of Southern
True,
Shores. So
but
let's
he-
focus on that.
Well, you're a planner,
I am, but I'm a
Yes.
resident of the town of Southern Shores,
Right.
just like Jim.
but you bring with you.
I don't think that's fair to him.
Do you all feel that DUC has achieved these things? Because you're familiar.
Yeah.
I'd never looked at the DUC code before, the town code. No.
So do you mean in terms of?
I mean, are there unified design standards, for example? I'm sorry, Elizabeth, but that's my question.
Okay.
I have pretty good
I
hearing.
don't mind speaking. So if I may. So for those of you all that do not know,
Go ahead.
I do work professionally for the town of DUC as the community planner. So with respect to wanting to have a plan, a well-defined plan that provides a vision for the future, I think DUC has that. And I think that Southern Shores has that too with their comprehensive land use plan and CAMA plan. Now, the goal is, of course, is to make, in the long run, everything a little bit better. And that's what we wanted to learn from you all. And that's this first phase of the report, is just really identifying what do we want as Southern Shores residents. I think you could not only ask that of DUC, but ask that of Kitty Hawk. Have they accomplished these things? And I don't know, to be very honest, I don't know that our leadership would say that, yes, we have accomplished these things. The town of DUC is in the future going to undergo a complete code review, a comprehensive review of existing code. That's the law, the local laws and regulations, because we understand that there are shortcomings and there's things that we could work towards redefining our code, making things more acceptable for what the public wants right now. So aside from that, I can't go through piece by piece and say duck is done goal 1, duck is done goal 2. And I think it's inappropriate to do that. While we want to jive with our neighbors, I think that it's very important that we focus on what we all want Southern Shores to accomplish, what we want Southern Shores to be. I live in Southern Shores. My paycheck comes from Duck, but we recreate here. We shop here. My family and I bike ride around here. We go to the beach here. We get on the sound here. So I love it. And I only look forward to seeing what this plan may offer. But sorry.
Comment? One?
No, I was just gonna say that, I was just gonna say that and I think one of you said it, not to recreate the wheel. It's great to hear and find inspiration from other places, whether it's Duck or some other town. And I think it was mentioned, like when we were talking low density, I think you mentioned it, Mayor. Like, what does that look like? So I think it's helpful to hear other stories personally. So thanks for sharing.
Does anybody else of the citizen have a comment, or we'll turn it to planning board and council members?
Hi, Rob Nielsen, Town Council. About 4 hours ago, I was in a meeting with the mayor of Kitty Hawk. And I just so happened to be in there with this study. I was sitting next to her. We were the only two with white hair in the room. But the whole point was it was a current TV meeting. And then she kind of reached over and I think Elizabeth has had some discussions with her, but she's relatively new. And she takes an inordinate amount of input. She doesn't necessarily show her hand right away. I mean, she's learning. But the whole point, when she looked through here, she was just nodding, yes, yes, yes. So we may have a cooperative partner in Kitty Hawk to be able to maybe have some common look in the entrance corridor, architecturally and whatever else. But they have a different zoning code, and they have a bigger commercial district, and they permit more things. So, but I think we have a receptive person in the mayor of Kitty Hawk.
Andy, you want to have a comment?
I will.
Go for it.
First off, I'd like to say kudos to you guys for doing this. I'm sitting here looking at the youth that's coming along, and it excites me. I've lived here for 43 years. If you look at that wall there, I've lived here under every one of their leaderships. And I think it's real easy to collectively look at that wall of people and the council that they ran and collectively say, well, they didn't do this and they didn't do that. But like Matt said, we have the card that we're dealt with. Over time, things have changed, and sometimes not for the better. And we all bemoan that, but we just can't stop and put our heads in the sand and say, well, we're not going to take this on. So I applaud you guys for doing what you do. And I know you'll come back with a good product. As far as what the planning board does, I just went through this, my notebook yesterday that I got on your plan, phase 1. And I'm looking at what the planning board's done, and I don't know if we're, involved in the aesthetics so much. I mean, we try not to be aesthetically driven, but we are to a certain degree. And just what we've worked on, and we fight mightily on the planning board. Elizabeth, you've been there, and we are really into preserving what we can preserve in this town. And we got a good thing going here. But with the planning board, since I've been the chair and the co-chair with, or the vice chair under you, Elizabeth, we've taken on things like signs and density, lot coverage, building height, mixed use group development, a biggie, architectural standards, hard to mesh with the state. setbacks, lot size, subdivision, lot width, lot disturbance, tree buffers. And we take it on and we fight like hell for the town of Southern Shores because we live here. And I just think that this is a great start to a good endeavor that will help all residents in Southern Shores feel extremely proud of where we live. So anybody want to know anything about the planning board, come to our next meeting.
Thanks, Andy. Jan, did you want us? Wait for Jim's microphone. Hold on.
I think, first of all, thank you, because I know the work and time that went into this, and we are all volunteers, and it is time consuming. So yes, one, thank you. And I'll follow up with Andy as far as what we do on the planning board and people before us and after us, the work that goes into that. And then Rob, I listened to the Kitty Hawk town meeting. And I know for a fact it was 3 hours long this month because they voted down the RV park extension. And the big thing was that the people wanted aesthetics, they want open space, they don't want the crowd. So I agree. I think Kitty Hawk is ready to work with us. And I think maybe, this is just my opinion, that we start with a landscaping committee with a architect, landscape architect to look at. I actually liked the arch when you came over the bridge. You know, it was like, oh yes, this is the right, you know, where the Wright brothers were, Dare County, and to have something aesthetic and people say, wow, because it's visual. That's the key. And then we can expand on that with the pass and the softening, and then look for open space for a community center. But I think visually, if we work together with Kitty Hawk, that we could do something as an entranceway. And that's my 2 cents. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Does that cover all the planning board members?
All the present, think so. So Michael, you have any comments?
Matt, do you have a comment?
I have just a brief comment. It's mostly a sentiment of appreciation for y'all for making it out here tonight and engaging with us. Because, I mean, honestly, I can be draconian and say, this is what I want, and I'm going to vote and fight this way. But the truth of it is I want a community that my kids are going to recognize the same way I recognize it Southern Shores today, and have a place in it. And that only comes from varied opinion and people offering it and showing up at these events. And I really appreciate every one of you for coming tonight. About 5:20 when there were 3 people in here, I was like, So it means the world to me personally. And I know the committee appreciates the feedback as we work towards actual recommendations and meat and potatoes part of this. So thank you and stay tuned would be my comment.
Councilman, on that note, have we established our next meeting date?
No.
And just a reminder that all of our meetings are advertised on the town's websites, and we encourage you to come and participate. Of course, you're willing to do your homework ahead of time too. That always helps for an engaged conversation.
Just want to thank everyone for coming. It's always good to see everyone. You know, when you talk to people who live here in Southern Shores, it's just like Andy said. If you ask them why they live here, the first thing they say is because they love Southern Shores. They love living here, and you know, that's a common feeling among people. And they don't even. It's not even hard for them to say. They'll say it right away. I love Southern Shores. I love living here, and it just, you know, makes my heart pound. I'm so excited to hear that. But you know, thinking about this and this effort, we didn't know that half of Marketplace was going to get demolished and redone. Well, there's another half of Marketplace that could be demolished and redone. So, you know, you can't think about just it's one, you know, place and time. You have to think about the future, and that's what this effort really is focused on. But Jan, I really like your idea about let's build the arch. That's fantastic. Great idea. Did we want to say anything else? Staff, did we miss anything? In that case, we'll just say, thank you again for coming. Stay tuned. Stay safe.